Welcome back to another video. This was supposed to be like a funny bit of me wearing the Shujin Academy outfit, but as you can see, I got it a size too small, so I'm gonna have to take it off. Not on camera, obviously. I don't even know. Pretty sure I can't even really show this whole thing off on YouTube because of how tight it is. But anyways, I hope you guys are having a great day. I know I am. This is tiers 1 through 3 of the Persona Iceberg, the definitive Persona Iceberg. Now, you might be asking, why are you re-uploading this video? Why are you doing this video again? And that's a really good question. The answer to that, honestly, is just the fact that I feel like that as a creator, I have... But
why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Just become much better at making videos than when I first uploaded the first 2 videos on the Persona Iceberg. So that's why I'm redoing it. I actually have a script now, and the content should be much higher quality, much more up to standards as to what I've been releasing nowadays. So with that being said, if you are new, you can go back and you can watch the rest of the tiers of this iceberg, as I believe I've uploaded up to tier 7. So after this video, I'll be making tiers 8 through 9, which will then be the last videos of the iceberg. So, like I said, I hope you guys are having a great day. And sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. And I forgot to say in the intro, as always, there is a spoiler warning for this video. I'll try to leave timestamps in the description, so if you feel you may be spoiled, please feel free to use that to skip ahead. With that out of the way, sit back, relax, and please enjoy the video. For the first entry in the iceberg, we have Persona 5 on the Switch. Lots of people's first introduction to Persona series was in fact through Persona 5 on the Switch. It was released October 21st, 2022 on not only the Switch, but the PlayStation 5 and Xbox One also. This release was highly anticipated since Joker was first revealed to be the first DLC character in the latest Smash Bros. Game nearly 3 years prior. Before this, Persona was a much more niche franchise than it is now, having sold 39 million units worldwide, and it's estimated to have grossed more than $2 billion. It's likely without Joker being revealed in Smash, and the subsequent release on next-gen consoles, Persona would not be where it is now, especially for the Western audience. Next, we have Persona 5 Scramble localization. Depending on the date when the iceberg was made, this can mean one of two things. Either this entry is stating the difference between the names and localization, as Persona 5 Scramble in the English release is called Persona 5 Strikers, or the more likely scenario is that this entry is from one of the icebergs that was made before the English release of Persona 5 Strikers, which released internationally on February 23, 2021, an entire year after its initial release in Japan. It's safe to say many people were anticipating this game to come to the West, and some were worried it might not come at all. But hopefully, Western audiences won't have to deal with this wait time anymore, since it seems after the success of Persona 3 Reload's international release, Atlus is now committed to global releases for their mainline games. Next, we have Cut Yosuke Romance. Those that have played Persona 4 might be surprised to find out Yosuke was originally supposed to be a romanceable option in the game. The exact reasons as to why this decision was made is unknown, aside from rumors stating that playtesters just didn't enjoy it. Most people point to Japan's more conservative-leaning population as the reason why it might have been changed, and especially back in 2008 when the game was released, it's possible the developers were afraid of the public's reaction to the option of a homosexual relationship within the game. There are files, however, that still exist within the game's code that show Yosuke was originally going to be a fully romanceable option. I will now play the clips in both English and Japanese along with the translation.
I focused all my attention on the murders to avoid having to confront myself. So long as I don't try, nothing will change even if we catch the killer. Right now, I'm just plain old me. And I want to do what I can with everything I got. With you guys. I never knew I had such heat inside. Don't make me say stuff like that. Don't go. I like you.
初めて知ったよ。俺の中にさ、こんななんか熱いのがあるなんて。言わせんなよ。行くなよ。俺、お前が好きだ。
Notice that when Yusuke says, I like you in Japanese, he is specifically using the word like in the romantic context. It's interesting to think about how the game series would have been if developers decided to keep this in the game, since one of the greatest gripes fans have about the Persona series is its lack of same-sex options when it comes to romance. This also would explain why Yosuke seems to exhibit homophobic behavior himself, as this kind of behavior is very common for those that are closeted homosexuals. Next, we have Persona 3 HD Remake. Obviously, this entry was added to the Iceberg before the reveal of Persona 3 Reloaded, which was revealed on June 11, 2023, and released almost a year later on February 2, 2024. And if you haven't played it yet, what are you doing? Go play it. Now. Protagonist name discrepancies. Officially, the protagonists of the Persona games all have canon names aside from whatever you decide to name them, and they are as follows: Naoya Todo from Persona 1, Tatsuya Tsuyu from Persona 2, Makoto Yuki and Kotone Shiomi are the male and female protagonists from Persona 3 respectively, Yu Narakami from Persona 4, and Ren Amamiya from Persona 5. Where this gets confusing is that sometimes the characters are given different names in the manga or in other sources that get people confused. Next, we have Persona 5 trips around the world. Believe it or not, Persona 5 was originally going to be a very different kind of game. In a 4Games interview with Persona 5 director Katsuya Hashino, it was revealed that the game was originally going to be about a trip around the world that would feature themes of self-discovery. Apparently, this all changed when the 2011 Tohoku earthquake hit Japan. That made Hashino want to return to his home country for the next Persona game instead of focusing on other countries. It's possible some of those initial ideas still made their way into Persona 5. For example, the vacation to Hawaii, or Futaba's palace being based in Egypt. It's also possible this idea will be revisited in a future Persona game as well. Persona 3 and 4 cameos in Persona 5. This is in reference to several Persona 3 and Persona 4 references made in Persona 5. For example, did you know that you can find a Rise poster in the underground walkway at Shibuya Station? Or how about when negotiating with a pyrojack in Kamoshida's palace that mentions apathy syndrome for Persona 3? And there's a lot more than that. So if that's something that interests you, I'll leave a link to the Reddit thread down below. Next, we have Persona 4 Steam leak. On June 9th, 2020, Steam database accidentally leaked that Persona 4 Golden was coming to Steam. And this was a big deal for the community, as it was argued whether Persona would ever come to PC or not for a long time. He has a gun. This is in reference to Joker's gameplay reveal for Smash Ultimate. When the narrator is talking about his moveset, he says,
For his neutral special, he wields a gun.
This became a huge meme at the time, having a character like Joker being able to shoot other characters in a game like Smash Bros. Is just super funny for some reason. And a lot of people made memes around Kirby stealing Joker's neutral special as well. Port beggars. This is in reference to the fact that many people begged for Persona 5 to be released on the Switch and next-gen consoles, even going as far as to harass developers on Twitter. And while I don't condone harassment in any way, I feel like to have that many people beg for your game to be released on their console so that they can play it is a pretty good problem to have. And that does it for the first tier. Overall, everything on the first tier is basic information regarding the Persona series. From here on out though, entries will become a lot more obscure and there's a lot of spoilers. For the first entry on the second tier, we have Smash Reveal. I think I already talked about this enough in the last tier, but obviously Joker's reveal in Smash Ultimate was huge for the Persona series, and it made a lot of people aware of the Persona games for the first time. Next, we have Bitches and Whores. This is in reference to this meme where Adachi from Persona manga says, "Bitches and Whores." This isn't what he actually says, however, as the original manga panel was changed for comedic purposes and is actually pretty fitting considering his incel personality. Persona 5 UI. This entry is in reference to the UI or user interface of Persona 5, which many people have noted in their experience with the game. It may seem small, but it's things like this that put Atlus and Persona on another level. It would have been very easy for the developers to just put a basic menu in, but this level of detail shows that the people behind this game really put their love and care into it. And if you think about it, with a game like Persona, you really want your menus to be visually appealing because you're going to be spending a lot of time in them. Adachi. Hopefully you saw the spoiler warning disclaimer at the beginning of the video, but if you didn't know, Adachi is the main antagonist of Persona 4 and the true killer of Inaba. Unfortunately, I was spoiled before my playthrough of Persona 4, but somehow I was still surprised at how Adachi ended up being the killer in the end. The fact that there were so many hints right under our noses the entire time and the manner in which it's revealed make this one of the greatest gaming plot twists of all time. Controllable party members in P3 FES. If you didn't know, your party members in Persona 3 FES were originally unable to be directly controlled by the player, unlike in later games. This usually isn't a problem, as you can still give them basic directions such as attack or heal, but sometimes this causes some headaches when a character goes for a specific move that you didn't want them to. I'm just glad they added direct control back to Persona 3 Reloaded. Next on the iceberg, we have canon love interests. One of the biggest draws of the Persona series is that you can choose to form bonds and relationships with many of the characters you meet in the game. With that, there are no official canon love interests for the protagonist of any of the games that have been confirmed by Atlus. But that hasn't stopped fans from importing their own ideas and opinions on what love interest they think is, quote, canon. Of course, there are characters like Rise and Sumire that are probably the most likely options for characters to romance, but that doesn't necessarily make those relationships canon over other relationships. In my canon, the MC of every game is either gay or a massive slut that tries to romance every woman in the game. Hitler in Persona 2. If you didn't know, Hitler is featured in Persona 2 at the end of the game. Well, kind of. It's not technically Hitler, but actually Nyarlathotep in disguise. In the PSP remake, his name was changed to Führer and he was given sunglasses. I don't know why they did that, because it's still very obviously Hitler, and the glasses honestly just make him look cooler. And just for the record, no, I'm not a Nazi. The answer. The answer is the campaign that takes place after the events of Persona 3, featuring Aigis as the lead character. This was later repackaged as DLC for Persona 3 Reloaded, which made a lot of people upset. Igor is Nyarlathotep. At the end of Persona 5, it's revealed that Igor was actually possessed by Nyarlathotep the entire time. This was hinted at multiple times throughout the game. For example, Igor's voice being drastically different compared to previous entries, referring to the Velvet Room as his Velvet Room, and other changes in his personality, as well as the fact that this is the only Velvet Room that isn't constantly moving like Persona 3's Elevator Room and Persona 4's Limousine Velvet Room. Hifumi Phantom Thief. Did you know? The star confidant of Persona 5, Hifumi Toga, was originally supposed to be a member of the Phantom Thieves? Well, kind of. It's a little confusing, so I'll drop a link to the Reddit thread in the description, but basically, Hifumi's original design was meant to be used for one of the Phantom Thieves when developers wanted to have the team consist of two strategists, one being Makoto and the other being this other character. Once the devs decided to only have one strategist in Makoto, the design for this character was changed and regulated to being a confidant. Next is Persona 3 calendar in Persona 4. If you don't know, the Persona 4 protagonist keeps a Persona 3 calendar up in his room. I really like these little references and nods that developers leave in their games that you don't have to waste hours digging for. Homophobic scene removed. In the original Japanese release of Persona 5, a number of scenes were altered when the game was translated to English, and then additional scenes were changed to Persona 5 Royale. These scenes were changed due to depicting gay and LGBTQ individuals in a negative light, and the scenes received so much negative attention from Western audiences that Atlus was forced to make a public apology and alter the scenes for Persona 5 Royal. P1 Localization. Persona 1 received a number of changes when it was brought overseas for an English release. Many of the main characters had their names changed and even the races were altered. This can be chalked up to Persona being a product of the 90s. It wasn't uncommon then for games and anime to receive massive changes when being translated for an English audience due to their perceived unpopularity compared to today. Next, we have P3 Mascot Debate. There's been some debate online as to who is the official mascot for Persona 3. In Persona 4, we have Teddy, and in Persona 5, we have Morgana. If we follow the theme of the animals, the mascot for Persona 3 must be Koromaru. But it's not. The actual mascot for Persona 3 is Aigis, and when you take a step back, it makes sense. 1. Unlike Teddy and Morgana, Koromaru can't talk. And 2. Teddy isn't technically even an animal. It's more accurate to say the theme for Persona mascots are things that don't actually exist. For example, walking teddy bears, or cats that can talk and that have a weird cartoon form, or sentient robots. Koromaru, on the other hand, is just a dog that can't even talk. Not to mention the fact that Aigis is constantly featured everywhere in Persona 3 promotional art. Anime adaptations. There exist several different anime adaptations for the games. 4 of them being movie adaptations of Persona 3, 2 of them being for Persona 4, 1 for the base game and 1 for the Golden, 1 Persona 5 anime that is universally disliked for reasons I'll get into another time, and Persona Trinity Soul, which takes place 10 years after the events of Persona 3 and is weird even by Persona standards. And lastly, for the last entry of the second tier, we have P4 Controversies. I've already talked about a number of the controversies that surround Persona 4, one being Yosuke's cut romance option. Some people think Rise and Teddy are annoying, and yeah, I get that. There's a lot more to unpack, so I'll leave a link to the Reddit thread down below. Overall, I was very surprised to see that so many people have such strong emotions against Persona 4, as I myself loved it and still consider it my favorite Persona game. But I guess it makes sense. I wouldn't take offense with anything in the game, seeing as how I'm a straight white guy and Persona 4 is, well, just a game. And with that, we're on to the third tier of the iceberg with Go to Sleep. Go to Sleep is in reference to Morgana constantly telling the MC to go to sleep in Persona 5, and many people thought it was annoying, so it became a huge meme. Then we have canon names. If you didn't know, each main character in Persona has their own official canon names, except for the first one, but we don't talk about that. The MCs for Persona 2 are Tatsuya Tsuyu and Maya Amano, Makoto Yuki and Kotono Shiomi for Persona 3, Yuno Rakami for Persona 4, and in Persona 5 we have Ran Amamiya. The problem with this is that sometimes their name is different in the manga or from other sources. In the manga, the male P3 protagonist is Minato Anasudo, and in the play, his name is Sakuya Shiomi. In the Persona 4 manga, Yu's name changes to Soji Seta, and Ran Amamiya becomes Akira Kurusu in the Persona 5 manga. As if this series wasn't already confusing enough. Next, we have pancakes. This is in reference to the fact that Akechi basically exposes himself as a Persona user extremely early into Persona 5. This is because when he runs into the gang, he overhears someone talking about pancakes. The only thing is that the person who was talking about pancakes was actually Morgana, and the only people who can hear Morgana are Persona users. So this was a very subtle way of Atlus hinting at the true identity of Akechi very early in the game, and we all missed it. Ryuji says fuck. In Persona 5 Strikers, Ryuji actually says the F word, which is funny because for most of the series he usually says FN or some other form of the word all the time to the point where it's become a meme. There's also this scene in the main game where it sounds like Hyoma says it, but it kinda gets cut off. Lobsters. This is in reference to when Yusuke buys too many lobsters when the gang goes to the beach. It was funny and memorable moment in the game and has since become a meme. Burn my bread. This is in reference to Persona 3's theme song, Burn My Dread. The only problem was that the song sounds a lot like Burn My Bread instead of Burn My Dread. So Burn My Bread became another Persona meme. Not as well known as some of the other memes on this iceberg though. Next, we have Kotaku Report It. I believe this is in reference to a Kotaku article ripping on Persona 5 for one of its tracks that has a word that sounds like the slur used for mental disabilities. Obviously, the song doesn't actually say it, it just sounds like it does. Which is funny because both this one and the last entry were both about misinterpreted music in Persona franchise. Anyways, that's not the first time Kotaku has done something like that, as they've done this kind of stuff before with Persona and other game franchises before as well. Unfortunately, this kind of behavior has ruined Kotaku's reputation, and most people don't consider it to be a reputable source anymore. Persona is a spin-off, and Persona 1 and 2 Forgotten. I don't remember if these were two different entries, but they're close enough to each other that I can kind of tackle them both at the same time. It's surprising to me that most people don't know that the Persona series actually started out as a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series. In fact, it wasn't until Persona 5 that Shin Megami Tensei was removed from the title of the Persona games. In Persona 1 and 2, this was a lot more evident, however, as those games even feature characters from SMTF. As the Persona series has gotten more popular, it seems Atlus has done more and more to sever Persona's ties with the rest of the SMT series. And I can't exactly blame them, as Persona has become the bigger of the two IPs. And you don't want new players to be confused about the difference between Persona and other SMT games. Unfortunately, however, this has resulted in the practical abandonment of Persona 1 and 2, although in Persona 1's case, that might be better left off forgotten. Next, we have Chad Yu. This is in reference to the protagonist of Persona 4, Yu Narukami, being an absolute Chad compared to the other MCs. The MCs are all usually pretty badass, but Yu is the definition of built different. Parents. This entry is in reference to the fact that parents are pretty wild in Persona. Like in Persona 3, your parents died, so okay, that makes sense. But in Persona 4, no one really knows what's going on with your parents. And in Persona 5, your parents kind of just get rid of you. Okay, well, that's not entirely true. Some people are of the impression that Joker's parents must be pretty shitty because they never contact you once during the whole game and they don't seem to really care about your well-being at all. But there is a lore-accurate reason for this. Basically, the reason you start going to Shujin Academy is because Shido pulled some strings and got you blacklisted from every other school in the country. But where it gets really crazy is the fact that you're not even related to Sojiro. A lot of people assume he's like your uncle or something, but this isn't the case, and he doesn't even actually know your parents. Basically, your parents are friends with one of his regulars, which is honestly just batshit insane. Maybe your parents are neglectful, because while I don't have children, there's no way I could fly my son out across country to some guy who's an acquaintance of an acquaintance at best. Luckily, Sojiro ended up being pretty cool and didn't pull any Diddy shit, because Persona 5 would have been a very different game. Next, we have Dorkun, which is in reference to the ending of Persona 3 The Answer, where it's revealed that the main protagonist of the game became a door to seal off Nyx. And apparently, this was really funny to people, so it became a meme. Next, we have Persona 3 and 5 Dancing, or canon. Believe it or not, Atlus has an interesting way of determining what is canon to Persona and what isn't. I don't know what that criterion is, but Atlus has confirmed that the two Persona dancing games are indeed canon. But I would also like to argue what is considered canon, because Persona 5 and 3 Dancing supposedly take place in the dreams of the two MCs of the games. So my question is, does that make the games canon? Because it technically didn't happen, right? Saving Shinjiro. Did you know that in original Persona 3 you could actually save Shinjiro? In order to do this, you have to choose the female MC and fully max out your social link with Shinjiro before October 4th. And when Takaya shoots him, Shinjiro would actually survive due to the bullet hitting the pocket watch you gave him. This doesn't mean you could still play with him, however, as instead of dying, he falls into a coma which effectively writes him out of the game. Until the very end of the story, when he comes back and the two of you can spend some time together. It makes sense why so many people were upset that Katone wouldn't be a playable character in Persona 3 Reloaded, as Shinjiro was a fan favorite character. P6 unused. This is in reference to the fact that within the files of Persona 5, there exist the files of an unused persona named P6 unused. And so, understandably, many people thought that this was some kind of hint to a persona that was going to be featured in Persona 6. But when you take a step back, you see how ridiculous that actually is. After all, what are the chances that Atlus started developing Persona 6 personas in the code for Persona 5 before the game was even out? A more likely answer was that this was just a simple typo, as the files around unused P6 are all titled unused P5. Next, we have female main character canon. I guess Atlus has confirmed that Katone is canon, and again, that's fine, I don't have a problem with that. But it seems Atlus has a pretty loose definition of what canon actually is, because this is another example of Atlus saying something is canon, but it's like alternate universe canon. So take that as you will, I guess. Korimaru is Hachiko. If you didn't know, Korimaru's character is based heavily on the real life story of Hachiko. If that sounds interesting to you, I actually made a YouTube short that'll explain it. I'll leave it in the description and I highly recommend checking it out. Persona 2 E2 localization. I think this is in reference to Persona 2 Eternal Punishment, which has never had a proper release outside of Japan, aside from fan translations. Apparently no one really knows why, and the only thing I could find was that it was due to unusual circumstances, which isn't much better. There is a theory, however, that states the reason it wasn't localized is due to its inclusion of famous author H.P. Lovecraft's copyrighted material, as there is a number of other games in the SMT series that feature elements of Lovecraft's work that never saw localization. Next is Accomplice Ending. If you don't know, there's a secret ending in Persona 4 that allows you to side with Adachi at the end of the game after finding out he's the true killer. This ending seems pretty divisive in the community, as there are those who hate it and those that love it. Honestly, I like it. Even if it does go against everything the Persona series stands for, it's just cool that Atlus gave us the option to do it, and most people probably wouldn't even find it until their second playthrough. SMTF and Devil Summoner Canon. I talk more about this later on in the Iceberg, so if you want to know more, I highly recommend you check this video out. But if you don't know, the SMTF series and the Devil Summoner games are both considered canon. Jack Frost mascot. If you didn't know, Jack Frost is actually the mascot of Atlus, and that's why he shows up everywhere in their games, kind of like Pikachu for Pokemon. And lastly, we have Devil Survivor 2 Stole Social Links. Okay, this one kind of pisses me off. I guess there's some people who think Devil Survivor 2 stole social links because there's a very similar mechanic in that game called Fate. But here's the thing. Devil Summoner 2 is an SMT game. It's produced by Atlus. So how could they be stealing the social link mechanic? It's just dumb. That's like saying Mario stole elements from Kirby when they're both made by the same people. Anyways, that does it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. This should be a bit longer than my other videos, and I hate to say it, but I will be kind of glad when it's all said and done. Not that I don't like making these videos, I just like to move on to other kinds of content. With that being said, we still have 2 more tiers to go, so if that interests you, I highly recommend subscribing and watching the rest of the videos I've done on this Iceberg in preparation for that one. And as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is episode 3 of the Persona Iceberg, tiers 4 and 5. Quick disclaimer. Just like the last video, there is going to be a spoiler warning for this video. So if you haven't played any of the mainline games for the Persona series, I highly recommend you go do that. Anyways, with that out of the way, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. First off, we have the last entry of the 3rd tier I forgot to cover in the last Persona Iceberg video. P5 Xbox. I couldn't really find anything specific on this, except for some people complaining about Persona 5 being removed from the Xbox Game Pass, which sucks, because then they would have had to bought the game in order to keep playing. Even then, I don't know if their data would have been saved or not. It would have sucked to put so many hours into a game only to lose it all on something like this. Next, we have Tatsuya is the Reaper. This is an unconfirmed theory that states Tatsuya Sodu from Persona 2 is the Reaper that reappears in every subsequent game. The main reasons stated for this include the designs for both characters somewhat resembling each other. Other than that, I don't really see or know any of much evidence for it. Although I guess it's still possible it could be true. It's probably one of the things that'll never be confirmed one way or another. Next we have Who Boy. This is in reference to when Sojiro says Who Boy in Persona 5.
You know, when I was young, ooh boy. Adachi.
It's pretty funny, so it just became a meme. Next we have Motorcycle Impression. This is referencing the fact that Tatsuya does a motorcycle impression in Persona 2, and it's a meme. Moving on, we have Trinity Soul. This is reference to a super obscure anime that takes place 10 years after the events of Persona 3. It seems people don't really like it, and it's been considered non-canon. I don't have anything to say about it because I couldn't find a way to watch it. Next, we have Frankenstein references. It seems that throughout the Persona series, there have been a number of references to the original Frankenstein book that most people don't really catch on, so it's pretty obscure. Most notably, the attendants of the Velvet Room and Igor all seem to be referencing characters from Frankenstein. Igor's original voice actor. This entry is talking about how the original voice actor for Igor in Persona 4 died, so they changed the voice actor in Persona 5. Obviously, there's lore reasons for Igor's voice change that gets shown at the end of the Persona 5. But once his true form is revealed, they have to use old clips of the original VA to create the voice lines of Persona 5. Although for the next installment, they'll likely have to find a new voice actor for the role. Or I guess they could use AI or something, I'm not sure. Next is deliberate leaks. This is just referencing the fact that Atlas has likely used deliberate leaks in order to stir up conversation about upcoming games. Multiple game companies have been theorized to use this marketing strategy. Maybe game devs get upset with publishers not letting them talk about their games, so they figure out ways to leak information to the public. Next entry on the list is Winter 2014 P4 Killer. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this entry is in reference to this Reddit thread from 8 years ago, where OP talks about how he was tricked into thinking Nanako was the true culprit in Persona 4 due to this fake image. Hey guys, it's me from the future. Apparently I was dead wrong about this. It's actually this teaser that said the game was going to come out in winter of 2014. Next is Smash Alt Meaning. I'm pretty sure this is referencing Joker's different alternate color schemes and how they correlate to the different Persona games. Purple for Persona 1, blue for Persona 3, yellow for Persona 4, red for Persona 2, and then the white and red one is for Crow. Next one is the P3 Twin Theory. This is just a theory that states that the male and female MCs for Persona 3 are twins, and depending on which one you chose, the other one ends up dying in a car accident where your parents were killed. Honestly, there's no real basis for this one that I could find. Manga. There is a Persona manga. I've already talked about it, how some of the MCs' names changed in the manga. The manga also has a lot more light-hearted moments that I feel give more characters to the MCs than the game does. Persona 5 Original Pitch. I'm pretty sure I talked about how Persona 5 changed early on in development, and it was supposed to be a game about backpacking around the world, but that idea was scrapped with the 2011 earthquake that happened in Japan. Some people are saying that concept could get reused for Persona 6, but anyone's guess is as good as mine, honestly. Great Vegetables. Dojima says great vegetables in part 4, and it's funny, so it became a meme.
Great vegetables.
One of my favorite Persona memes, honestly, and it's also my banner for YouTube. Smash Menu Design. There's an interview where Sakurai talks about how he loves the menu design of Persona 5, and it's highly possible that was an inspiration for the menu design of Smash Ultimate. Smash Ultimate has this really unique main menu that's not really talked about enough. Makoto and Joker remember PQ and PQ2. There's a theory that Makoto and Joker remember the events of the Persona Q spin-off games. I couldn't find any real basis for this, although I guess it's like most of these theories, it's possible. Atlas is great at letting people reach their own conclusions when it comes to this kind of stuff. Lastly, for Tier 4, we have people stuck in Tartarus. I don't know why this is so low in the Iceberg, so if this is referencing something more obscure, I apologize. But in Persona 3, people can get stuck in Tartarus, and you have to save them. It's kind of creepy that if you don't save them, I guess they technically die, like a shadow gets to them or something. And if you don't rescue one of the characters that's important to a specific social link, that social link becomes forever broken. Anyways, that's it for Tier 4. Now it's time for Tier number 5. For the first entry of the 5th tier, we have Makoto was going to appear in Ultimax. There doesn't seem to be any evidence that Makoto was originally supposed to be in Ultimax. Obviously, due to the events at the end of Persona 3, that would be pretty difficult to do, and the community was pretty split at the time if Makoto should be added to the game or not as DLC. Obviously, Makoto is a fan-favorite character and the MC of the 3rd game, but some people were against it because it would make his death seem less significant. Also, I just want to say that we've reached to the point of the iceberg that the only information for these entries are on forums over 10 years old. And it's really cool to go back and look at these old posts. Anyways, next we have Persona H. Persona H is a fan-made hentai version of Persona 4. You're welcome. Akechi OVA. So there was an OVA for the Persona 5 anime at the time, which included a lot of scenes around Akechi that would become a part of the game in Persona 5 Royale. Apparently something similar happened with the scene of Kawakami trying on clothes that made its way into the game as well. Although I'm not really sure what came first. Was the anime based off the game or just released first? Or were the scenes in the game inspired by the anime? No one really knows. Next we have Revelations Persona. I don't know why this is so low in the iceberg, but this is just the first Persona game. That's it. Persona Q3 will feature P1 and P2 characters. Persona Q is the spin-off series on the 3DS that has yet to have a 3rd installment announced, although it seems it has a small but dedicated fanbase who really want a 3rd one. And some people think that if there was a 3rd game, it would feature characters from Persona 1 and 2. But let's be honest, this is probably never going to happen. Atlus doesn't want anything to do with those games. P5S sequel debate. Apparently, people are confused about whether Persona 5 Strikers is a sequel or not, and in what capacity. Which, I can't exactly blame them. It's not like Persona is the simplest game series, as I'm pretty sure you can tell that at this point. But in case you were wondering, Persona 5 Strikers is a canon sequel to Persona 5, but not to Persona 5 Royal. I know, it's annoying. The Taisho era was extended into the 1930s. This is in reference to the Raido Kuzunoha games, which take place in the 20th year of the Taisho era. In reality, the Taisho era was only 15 years long and ended in 1926. If it lasted 5 years longer, like in the Kuzunoha games, that would have made it last longer into the 1930s. Since both series share a canon, this means that in Persona, the Taisho era was extended into the 1930s. Akechi Rat. In the code for Persona 5, there exists a fully functioning rat model for both Akechi and Sumire. This led some people to believe that these characters were originally supposed to be playable in Shido's palace until very late in development. A simpler explanation, though, is that you could fight Mott in Mementos, and he has an attack that can turn you into a rat. The rat models are still pretty cute, though, honestly. P4 Arena Joker. In the files for Persona 4 Ultimax, voice lines from the announcer hint that Persona 5 MC was planned to be a playable character. The announcer also has a voice line for a potential Persona callout for Mephistopheles, which was originally supposed to be the name of Joker's persona until it was changed to Arsene. P4G Anime is New Game Plus. In the Persona 4 Golden anime, a lot of people think that the anime takes place in the New Game Plus version of the game. This is because compared to the original anime for the original Persona 4, the Persona 4 Golden anime seems to skip through most of the events in the first game and anime and focus on the new additions. People also think Yu only uses Izanagi because it's level 99 from the previous run. Yu was an SMT 4. I don't know if this is a joke entry, but I couldn't find any references to this anywhere. Also pretty sure this is impossible due to how the canon works. although it's not like Atlas hasn't found workarounds in the past. Persona JoJo similarities. As I've talked about before, Persona and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure have a ton of similarities. Honestly, that could warrant its own video. Obviously, the most obvious ones are stands and personas, especially personas like Izanagi, which look just like a stand. Sejiro Pimp. Sejiro has that one hat that makes him look like a pimp, so it became a bit of a meme, but not as popular as some of the memes earlier on the Iceberg. Akechi lives. There seems to be some debate as to whether Akechi lives or dies in the real ending of Persona 5 Royal. As in the true ending, we could see Akechi being escorted away by men in suits, but this scene doesn't seem to be literal. There's also some people who think that Joker was able to keep the fake version of Akechi alive after everything goes back to normal, but there doesn't seem to be any evidence for this. Honestly, most of the theories surrounding Akechi being alive after the events of Persona 5 just seem to be cope. P3 music. I have no idea what this means. P3 has music in it? I have no idea. If you have any idea what this could be in reference to, please let me know. Stage plays. If you didn't know, there exists a number of Persona live action plays based on the games that are honestly really cool. I highly recommend you check them out if you haven't already. Yongen Jaya IRL. Yongen Jaya is in Persona 5, is based on the real life location of the same name in real life, and the game is extremely accurate to the real life version of the location. P1 PC port. There is no PC port for Persona 1. There is a PS1 version you can get with an emulator, but due to the localization, most people recommend emulating the PSP version if you can. I am currently in the process of trying to emulate these games, so I know a little bit more about the series and possibly even capture some gameplay, so let me know if you guys would like to see that. Lastly, for Tier 5, we have Nanako's headphones. Okay, I genuinely could not find anything in reference to Nanako having headphones. There are some limited edition Persona 4 headphones. Also, something that wasn't even on any of the icebergs I used is the fact that an older version of Nanako was in the beta version for Persona 5. I think I'm going to add some extra entities at the end of the series. Just stuff that I found in my research that I think is interesting and probably not that many people know about. Anyways, that does it for Tier 5. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I actually wrote a script this time, so hopefully it worked out well. I think I'm actually starting to get a hand of this thing when it comes to the quality and everything. When I compile all the tiers together for the final episode, I think I'll redo the first 2 episodes just so that they're consistent with the quality of the other videos in the series. It's really annoying to have to redo videos, but I feel like it's necessary. Anyways, remember to like, comment, subscribe. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace. Saw this on the Iceberg. I thought this was clearly a joke entry, but to my surprise, it's actually not. I promise I'm not delusional. Oh yeah, this right here is the good stuff. So, I think this one might just be my favorite so far. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the definitive Persona Iceberg. Today we're going to be covering tiers 6 and 7. If you're new to the series, I highly recommend you go back and watch some of my older videos on this iceberg. That will explain how I went about making this iceberg. And obviously, there's a spoiler warning on this video as well. I'll try to leave the timestamps in the description, so if you feel like you're going to get spoiled, you can skip ahead using that. With that out of the way, get comfy, relax, and please enjoy the video. For the first entry of the 6th tier, we have Akechi and Futaba are half-siblings. This is in reference to a theory posted on Persona 5 subreddit 8 years ago that states Akechi and Futaba share the same father in Shido. The reasons given for this are the fact that Futaba's father isn't present, whereas Akechi's mother isn't present either. And both of them were out of wedlock. It's also possible that Wakaba and Shido knew each other through the field of cognitive science, and the two share some, albeit loose, similarities in their design and personality. Overall, while there's not a ton of evidence to support this one, it's definitely possible, and honestly, I kinda like it. Next, we have TMS is Persona 4.5. Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE, or TMS for short, is a JRPG that released back in 2015 on the Wii U as a collaboration between Atlas and Intelligent Systems, as a crossover between the Fire Emblem series and the Shin Megami Tensei series. This game apparently has a lot in common with the Persona series, both theme and gameplay-wise. For example, Mirages, which are basically this game's version of Personas. So due to their similarities, some have domed TMS Persona 4.5. Next we have FOH. I have no idea what this could be in reference to. There's an old forum post 12 years ago talking about how Persona 4 Golden is going to release in 4 more days. There's also FOE, which is a special type of shadow that only appears in the Q series. Again, sorry for not being able to find anything on some of these entries. I think some of them are just too broad. Next, we have Joker in the Sonic movie. At first, when I saw this on the Iceberg, I thought this was clearly a joke entry, but to my surprise, it's actually not. In the beginning of the Sonic movie, during the intro, Sega does this little thing where they pan out and show a bunch of clips of games they own, and for a split second, you can actually see Joker show up. As Sega owns Atlas, which means Sega has the rights to Persona. There's also this limited edition Joker Sonic that appeared as a character in the fan-made game Sonic Reloaded. They kind of give me Sonic 2 vibes. Anti-Vax Nanako. Nanako from Persona 4 is voiced by Karen Strassman in the English dub of the game, as well as many other characters you might know about. Karen Strassman in recent years has come under some controversy due to her support for Republican candidate Donald Trump, as well as her stance against vaccinations and the support for other right-leaning ideologies. Since then, Anti-Vax Nanako has become a meme, and honestly, I think this one might just be my favorite so far. Akechi Palace. In the files for Persona 5, there exists unused dialogue boxes that would have been shown during a holdup in a potential Akechi Palace. But as we all know, Akechi doesn't have a palace in the final version of the game. So why was it cut? The answer is, no one really knows. After all, it seems like a guy like Akechi would definitely have a palace. And honestly, who's to say he didn't have one? He basically dies not long after we find out about his true identity, so what if we just never had enough time to steal his treasure? And obviously, the most likely answer is time restraints and the production of the game. It's possible developers just ran out of time to have Akechi's palace in the game, or the idea was scrapped because they didn't want to bloat the game with even more palaces than it already has. P5 Arena. A lot of people want a Persona 5 Arena game. I can't exactly blame them, as the only thing to do after making a game franchise full of lovable characters would be to make a spin-off to have them beat the shit out of each other. Although with the Persona 6 reveal around the way soon, I promise I'm not delusional, hopes for Persona 5 Arena are shrinking. Next, we have Philemon still active. Philemon is a character that played a much more active role in the first 2 Persona games, and if you haven't played those games yet, I'm in the process of making a video on why you should. So comment and hit the bell notification button if you think that'd be something you're interested in. Anyways, Atlas has confirmed that Philemon still plays a pretty big role behind the scenes on the newer Persona games, as it's him who leads the MC throughout the game in the form of the Blue Butterfly. Some people think he'll play a larger role in Persona 6, but I doubt that. Because as I said before, Atlas will do everything they can to distance themselves from the first 2 Persona games as far as possible. Persona Alternate History. As I covered before, Persona is a spin-off of the SMT series, and shares a canon with the Devil Summoner games, which means that Persona takes place in the same alternate timeline as Devil Summoner. I found the best version of the whole timeline that I could, and yeah, I'm not even gonna try to understand what that means. I'm sure other YouTubers are willing to do it, I just have to go to school and shit. Next, we have P3 Beta. Over the years, Atlas has released some of the concept art and early gameplay footage for the original release of Persona 3. Most interesting to me was the changes in design for some of the characters. Yukari gets long hair, Junpei gets a new hat, and almost every main character gets some sort of change in their design. Persona is anti-religion. People have talked about whether Persona is anti-religious or not. Here's an image of this old Talk Jesus forum post that I thought was really funny and obviously fake. Honestly, stuff like this makes me glad Persona wasn't as big in the States back when I was growing up as it is now. I mean, we already had it hard enough with Pokemon being demonic. Imagine if they got to look at Persona back then. I mean, honestly, they probably would have been right about most of it, though. For what it's worth, as someone who is religious, I've never really been offended by anything from a Persona game. After all, the game is based on Jungian psychology, and Jung was far from being an atheist. Jack Frost is canon. I mean, yeah, obviously Jack Frost is canon. He's like in every Persona game. But have you ever stopped to think about the fact that Jack Frost not only exists as a shadow, but as dolls and toys within the Persona universe? What would the implications of this be? Is the whole metaverse and TV world and Dark Hour just a creation of Big Jack Frost to sell more Jack Frost dolls? Itachi breaks free. Itachi doesn't break free, at least in any canon way, to the Persona series. He does sort of get out in Persona 4 Arena, in which he gets pushed through a TV again, but this is only for that game, and he goes back in at the end of the game anyways. There's also some instances of people spamming his name in chat or whenever Persona's mentioned anywhere online. It kind of reminds me of the way animals will call out to each other in order to locate each other. It's kind of cute, honestly. Akechi and Sumire rap model. I already talked about this one in the last video. Elizabeth looking for Makoto. In Persona 4, it's revealed that Margaret is actually the sister of Elizabeth from Persona 3, who has left the Velvet Room in search for the Persona 3 protagonist Makoto. Margaret says that even if it takes eons, she will accomplish her mission, which is kind of disappointing. Like, come on, I just want to see what happens. Tying it back into Persona 5 Arena, which I covered earlier, some people think Makoto will finally return once Elizabeth finds him. And I think it's official, Persona fans are the most delusional fan base in the world. Each cycle is a new playthrough. I couldn't really find any information on this. I think it might be in reference to the fact that some people think New Game Plus is somehow canon, and my question is like, why? Like, even if it is, why does that matter? Other than that, this entry is just too generic for me to say what it's referencing 100% certainty. Next is Naoto is a Kuzunoha. Naoto's full name in Persona 4 is Naoto Kuzunoha, which means that she's directly related to Raido Kuzunoha from the Devil Summoner games. They also have pretty similar designs to one another. I understand most people probably wouldn't know this, but I don't know if it belongs this far down the iceberg. Persona 0. I mean, I don't really know what to say for this one, except that sometimes SMTF and Devil Summoner and the SMT series as a whole kind of gets referenced as Persona 0 due to being Persona's predecessors. Persona 4 alignments. Again, I feel like this is super vague. Anyways, there is this thing called the morality alignment chart, and it's been used in series like SMT to decide what kind of ending the player gets. Persona doesn't really have this kind of feature, however. Technically, there is a bad and a good ending, but I wouldn't really say it has anything to do with alignment specifically. It could also be a reference to these Persona alignment charts people love to make. And lastly, it could honestly just be a misspelling of ailment, as one of the search results I got for Persona 4 alignment was a list of status ailments in the game. P5 on Vita. I guess people really wanted Persona 5 to come out on the PS Vita, and it's pretty obvious as to why that never happened. The PS Vita is considered to be a failed console, having only sold about 16 million units. Not only that, but Persona 5 is a massive game and a significant graphical upgrade since the last mainline installment. Despite this, it looks like some people were able to homebrew their way onto a PSP version of the game with only a few downgrades. Next, we have hidden/cut endings. As I've talked about before, each Persona game has a few different endings, and while I couldn't find anything specific about certain endings being cut, it is interesting to think about how things would have turned out differently. Aegis, the first mission. Oh yeah, this right here is the good stuff. So, Aegis, the first mission is a mobile game that originally released back in 2007 on select mobile devices. The original version of the game is considered to be lost media because it's impossible to download now even if you have a compatible phone. However, just recently it was released on Steam. Apparently, there's plans for an English translation as well, so when that happens, I'll definitely be playing it and might even make a video on it. Naoto manga. If you didn't know already, there's a non-canon Naoto manga that takes place after the events of Persona 4 and Persona 4 Dancing that was made by the people who made Persona 3 and Persona 4 mangas. Nazi anime girls. I don't know why this is on the list. There are Nazi anime girls, just not in Persona. I've come to realize that these lower tiers are really hit or miss. You get stuff like I Guess the First Mission, which is really cool, relatively unknown topic concerning the Persona series, and then you get Nazi anime girls. Etrian Odyssey 4 Leftovers and PQ. So something I didn't even realize is that the Persona Q games are based on the Etrian Odyssey games and are even made by the same developers. Honestly, I didn't even know what Etrian Odyssey was until researching for this video. But it makes sense that if you had two games similar enough to each other made by the same people, some of the assets would be reused. Factor of Hope. Factor of Hope is the name of the Persona 4 movie that is pretty rare and only released in the 10th volumes of the Japanese DVD release of the anime, as well as shown in some movie theaters. It's basically the 26 episodes of the anime, but recut to fit in 90 minutes. And at the end of the movie, there's a scene with Makoto teasing a Persona 3 movie. Persona 5 Reverse Social Links. In the files for Persona 5, there exists unused data for a doubt mechanic that would have featured similarly to the reverse social link mechanics of past games. I'm actually kind of glad this wasn't a thing, as accidentally getting the wrong answers and having a social link reversed is really annoying and honestly just encourages players to use a manual even more. But did you know that in Persona 3, social links were originally designed to be locked forever if they became reversed? Imagine getting broken up with in real life, only to have Yukari break up with you in the game. Sheesh. Persona 5 is going to be darker. More files hidden in Persona 5 show that the game was originally designed to be a lot darker, with an alternate interrogation scene that shows the police going a lot harder on you than in the base game. Not only that, but as we talked about before, Persona 5 has a ton of unused content that makes it seem like Persona 5 was supposed to be even darker than what it was. C's in P5. While C's from Persona 3 didn't make an appearance in Persona 5 outside of references here and there might actually be a lore reason for this. As in Persona 4 Arena, it's explained that C's did detect shadow activity coming from Inaba, but had no way of accessing the TV world. In the same sense, even if Fuka did notice shadow activity, there's nothing C's could do without the metanav. Shido is Shinzo Abe. Shido, the main antagonist in Persona 4, and the person who basically kickstarts the entire game by having you kicked out of school, is very similar to the real-life Japanese politician Shinzo Abe. Not so much in appearance as more in personality and political ideas. Shinzo Abe was the Conservative Party leader and served twice as Prime Minister before being assassinated in 2022. P6 will be green. Probably. P3 novels. There exists a number of novels that released based on the characters of Persona 3, most notably this one about Akihiko Sanada, and it takes place a month before the events of the main story. It expands on some of the other characters, as well as like Yukari and Shinjiro. Overall, I think it's pretty obscure due to its age and lack of English translation. And lastly, we have Port Island is Kobe. I've talked about this in previous episodes, but if you didn't know, Port Island of Persona 3 is based on real-life island of Kobe in Japan. And that does it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Sorry I couldn't find all the information on some of these entries. A lot of these definitely seem to be hit or miss. Sometimes you'll get something really cool, like I Guess the First Mission, and sometimes you get P6 will be green. I have no idea why that's this slow in the Iceberg. Also, at the time I'm writing this, school is about to begin, which means that I'm going to be a lot busier. Uploads will probably slow down to once a week, again, like originally planned, which might be a good thing because between you and me, I'm going pretty hard in the paint making these videos, and I really want to avoid burnout as much as possible. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, remember to hit that like button, comment down below what you'd like to see next, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the final episode of the definitive Persona Iceberg, Tiers 8 and 9 of the definitive Persona Iceberg. As always, there's a spoiler alert in this video, so if you haven't played the games, and definitely if you haven't gone back and watched my earlier episodes on this series, I highly recommend you go do that before watching this video. Otherwise, there may be some points in the video which may not make a whole lot of sense. But with that being said, sit back, relax, and please enjoy the video. Persona Detective Naruto. Did you know about this obscure Persona 4 spin-off manga titled Persona X Detective Naruto? Written by Natsuki Mamiya and illustrated by Shigenori Sojima and Shiki Satoshi, set 1 year after the end of Persona 4, Naruto is asked to investigate the mysterious disappearances of 2 Yagakuro students by an old detective friend, Tooko Aoi. There, she is partnered with Sosei Kurogami, a mechanical detective and a polar opposite to her in terms of personality and methodology. In their first encounter, she awakens to a new persona, Amatsu Mikaboshi, which enables her to amplify Sosei's persona ability, Tsukiyomi. Together with Sosei, she discovers the Midnight Site, an anonymous site where judgment is passed on others by 5 judges named after figures in Japanese mythology: Izumi, Suratahiko, Omekane, Taji Kurano, and Fututama. However, it quickly becomes apparent that this case and another under Toko's supervision are related when one of the judges turns up dead with ballistics pointing to a missing police officer's gun. Naruto and the others must discover the identity of the other judges to protect them and find out the culprit who seeks to kill them. If that sounds interesting, I'll leave a link to the chapters on Manga Dex below, since it has yet to have an official English translation. There's a theory that states Ren Amamiya, the MC in Persona 5, is originally from the setting of Persona 4, the small town of Inaba. One piece of evidence that supports this theory is the fact that the dog barking sound effect heard in the Shido flashback scenes of Persona 5 is very similar to the dog barking sound effects heard in Persona 4 during the Devil Social Link cutscenes in the hospital.
Nice work.
Although most likely this is just due to Atlas reusing assets, as they often do. But this theory isn't just for the protagonist of Persona 5. There are some who believe each protagonist is originally from the location of the past game. That would mean P3's MC is from Samura City, Yu is from Tatsumi Port Island, and Joker is from Inaba. This would also make sense thematically if each MC is supposed to be a reflection of the player. It would make sense that each MC would be from the location of the last game, since the player also technically lived in the previous location before moving on to the next game in the series. Persona 4R. Many people, myself included, really want Atlas to remaster Persona 4. After all, if they can do it for Persona 3, they can definitely do it for Persona 4. Not to mention the fact that Persona 4 was released just 2 years after Persona 3, meaning Persona 4 could definitely benefit from some graphical upgrades. In fact, people want Persona 4 remastered so much that some extremely talented fans have started making trailers in an attempt to persuade Atlas to develop a Persona 4 remake and demonstrate the desire fans have for this game. Hell, someone even made an updated version of the UI that looks just as good as the one in Persona 3 Reloaded. And although I would love a remake of Persona 4, I would rather Atlas release Persona 6 first. But what do you guys think? Would you rather have Persona 6 or Persona 4 Replay? Persona 3 Mobile. There exists an extremely obscure Persona 3 mobile game called Persona 3M, released exclusively for Japan on November 26, 2007. It takes place during the Yakushima trip in Persona 3. In the game, when members of SEES go to sleep, they awaken in the Nightmare Hour, which is similar to the Dark Hour from the main game. During this time, they must explore a Tartarus-like dungeon called Oneiros, the entrance of which is a hollow opening inside a large tree. During their exploration of Oneiros, the group periodically encounters Arche-Persona bosses at 20-floor intervals. The first 2 bosses depend on who is in the protagonist's party upon reaching that floor. These first 2 bosses' stats are fixed and do not scale. Regardless, Fuka and the protagonist's Arche-Personas are always encountered on the 60th and 80th floors respectively. The Arche-Personas symbolize a different side to the users they often belong to and are often difficult for them to accept. In that respect, they are similar to the shadows of characters in Persona 4. To reflect this, they have swapped color palettes. For example, Archer Orpheus is red, and their strengths and weaks are often the opposite of the original. There is also a social link mechanic in this game, in which you're able to hang out with different members of C's in exchange for special items. There's a lot more to this game that intrigues me, so I'll definitely have to get my hands on it and play it somehow, and might even make another full-length video on it. So if that's something you'd like to see, let me know in the comments down below. Sakurai played Persona 5 early. Did Sakurai play Persona 5 early? I couldn't find any concrete evidence for Sakurai being able to play Persona 5 early, as Persona 5 was released in Japan on September 15th, 2016, and the earliest I could find Sakurai mention Persona 5 is this interview published in Famitsu Volume 515 on October 6th, 2016, in which Sakurai applauds Persona 5 on its design, but mentioned he's barely had any time to play it since he's too busy working. When Joker was revealed to be a playable character in Smash Ultimate, Sakurai visited Atlus headquarters for another interview, in which he talks about his own personal history with the Persona series. For example, did you know Sakurai has actually been a long-time fan of the Persona series, going all the way back to Persona 1? Or how about the fact that in his first playthrough, he was able to max out every social link except for one character, and that being Yusuke, because he thought the game would last for a few months longer. But the highlight of this interview for me definitely has to be the super adorable interactions between Sakurai and Morgana. Devil Survivor 2 Fate System. I've already talked about this much earlier in the Iceberg, which makes me wonder why it's so low. But if you didn't know, Devil Survivor 2 is a Shin Megami Tensei game released for the Nintendo DS and 3DS that has a very similar system to the social link mechanic of Persona. Makoto alive. Pretty sure this is a joke entry because we all know Makoto dies at the end of Persona 3. Some people don't consider him 100% dead though, as he still acts as the seal keeping Nyx locked away. I'll talk more about this in my other videos though. Metis is Aiga's shadow. After Makoto's death, Aiga's emotional pain was so intense she couldn't stand it. She wished to become a mere machine again and lose the human side of her that caused her pain. Separated from Aiga's, that human side took the form of Metis, which is more emotional and childish in nature. At the end of the answer, Aiga's accepts Metis as a part of her again, causing them to fuse. So while not confirmed, it's pretty easy to see the similarities between Metis and the shadow bosses in Persona 4. Nyx returns. I have a hard time seeing this ever happen in any way that isn't non-canon unless Makoto is somehow revived and isn't Dorikun anymore. Maybe all the protagonists could team up or something, like maybe if they did it in Q3. But other than that, I highly doubt this would ever happen again. Dojima is the killer. One of my favorite things about Persona 4 is how at the end of the game, in the secret ending, it was revealed that Dojima actually has been the killer this whole time. But who would have seen that coming? No, but for real, there are rumors online that say Dojima was originally planned to be the killer, but these are just rumors, and as far as I could find, there's no evidence to this being the case. One rumor that turned out to be true, however, was the fact that Itachi was originally not supposed to be the true killer, but just simply a red herring meant to throw the players off. Apparently, his original design was meant to be a lot more suspicious to aid in playing the role of the red herring.
I'll be crying if I look like that too, bro. That's fucked up what they be doing to y'all. I ain't even gonna hold you, bro. I be saying that's fucked up, like, bro, you probably had the full washing set. Your shit be fire probably if they ain't cut your shit. Fuck it though, bro. It's your life.
But it was changed to being more innocent looking after this idea was scrapped. Gnarly predicted Adam Cadmon. Gnarly is a YouTuber who makes SMT content who I had no idea existed, but I'm glad I found out about him because he's definitely a channel I'm going to be using as interpretation for this one. 5 years ago, he uploaded a video talking about what demons he'd like to see return to SMT, and one of the demons he listed was Adam Cadmon, who hadn't returned since SMT9. That was until the release of Persona 5 Royal, where Adam Cadmon is the final form of Maruki's persona and the final boss of the game. So yeah, in some ways I guess Gnarly did kind of predict Cadmon coming back to SMT. Persona 1 Iku no Tohen. Megami Iban Roku Persona Iku no Tohen, or Persona 1 Iku no Tohen, is another obscure mobile game, this time based on Persona 1. And that's all I had to say about this one, except that this one is actually on Steam, meaning I'll definitely be playing it probably sometime this summer. And that's it for the 8th tier. Now moving on to the final tier. This is the one we've all been waiting for. Sei's apartment. Okay, so I can't speak Japanese, nor can I find an English translation, so I'm just going to have to take Metaverse's Mysteries' word for this one. There's this online game show that ran from 2014 to 2016 called Persona Stalker Club before it was renamed to Persona Stalker Club 5 until the show ended in 2017. The show is hosted by the voice actress for Hifumi, Tomomi Isomura, and Kajira Mafia, who worked on DLC for Persona 2. On episode 5 of Persona Stalker Club 5, it's revealed by director Katsura Hashino and character designer Shigenori that in one build of the game, Joker was planned to live with Side Nijima in her apartment instead of living in LeBlanc. I'm unsure if this was to be for the entire game or only for a specific section, and I found another video showing the inside of what would have been Sei's apartment. But in this version of the game, it seems like the developers used the model of Catherine McBride from Catherine, another game by Atlas, as a placeholder for Sei. Stupid game. The only thing I could find for this one is this one Reddit thread, and oh, that's porn, isn't it? Attendants were human. I think this might be another gag / throwaway entry, since, while not being 100% confirmed to my knowledge, most people accept the fact that attendants of the Velvet Room aren't human, but are creations of Igor to aid in service to the MC. But where things get weird is when you get to Persona 1 and 2. In Persona 2, there are 3 attendants in the Velvet Room: Belladonna, Nameless, and Demon Painter. Only Belladonna and Nameless aren't actually created by Igor, but by Philemon, and like Igor, are a part of the Velvet Room themselves. All that leaves is Demon Painter, which, surprisingly, is actually just a normal guy who one day wandered into the Velvet Room and never left. So, he is canonically the only Velvet Room attendant who is human. Forbidden McDonald's. I don't know if this is what the entry is referring to, and most likely it isn't, seeing as how these entries are quite a few years old at this point, but there is this channel on YouTube called RevanXL that's uploaded a couple AI videos featuring the protagonist of Persona going to McDonald's, and honestly it's really funny, so go check them out. Akane becomes VTuber. Akane is a character from Persona 5 Strikers that is a massive fan of the Phantom Thieves, even going as far as to have her own streaming channel. But to call her a VTuber is a bit of a stretch, unless you count talking in a deep voice and holding up a toy in front of the camera. Somehow though, she has amassed 50k subscribers. And really? 50k people subscribed for this? Whatever. I'm not jealous or anything, but I think I might be switching my content up from now on. Adachi breaks the fourth wall. This isn't the only fourth wall break in Persona, as there are tons of examples of characters throughout the series making references to the fact that they're in a game. That's not to say that any of these characters are aware in the game or anything, just a little joke here and there that are thrown in by Atlas to make the player laugh, and Adachi is no different. There's this point in Persona 4 where he talks about having to shove Mitsuo into the TV or the game would be over. But honestly, this isn't really a fourth wall break, as Adachi and the other characters refer to the murder mystery as a kind of game throughout Persona 4. But as I said before, there are tons of fourth wall breaks in Persona. Like how in Persona 5 Strikers, Ryuji talks about how it's like the crew are in an RPG or something. Or in Persona 4, when Yamada makes sure that you know exactly how Atlas is spelled and assures you that there can be no other spelling for the word. Jose replaces Igor. So there's this theory that Jose from Persona 5 will replace Igor in the next installment of the series. Since the voice actor for Igor, Isamu Tanoka, died in 2010, it's likely they will go with a new character instead of having to reuse old lines like they've done until now, and a lot of people seem to think Jose could be the one to replace him. Jose himself is a very mysterious character within Persona 5, so here's what we know about him. We know that he is trying to understand humanity under the promise of a, quote, certain person. Once 123 stamps have been collected in mementos, Jose will challenge you to a friendly fight to learn more about humanity. Upon defeating Jose, An asks about the certain person Jose keeps talking about, and Jose tells the crew that there are more people observing humankind than you realize. Could this certain person be Philemon? Not to mention, his design is eerily similar to that of a doll, and we know Igor was a doll that came to life and now serves Philemon. And lastly, we know that in order to learn about humans, Jose collects flowers and mementos and turns them into juice, which he drinks. Kind of like a butterfly, the form Philemon takes after Persona 2. Honestly, out of all the crackpot Persona 6 theories, this might be the one I actually think is possible. But what do you think? Do you think Jose could come back in Persona 6 to replace Igor? Haru was the traitor. There's a theory that states at some point in development, Haru was originally supposed to be a traitor instead of Akechi, but is there any validity to this story? Well, there are a few points, but I'll save my opinion for the end and let you come to your own conclusion. The first point of the theory makes notes to Haru's seemingly rushed introduction to the party in contrast to the rest of the crew. Some people think that of all the characters, her character arc was the weakest, which may point to the fact that she was changed at some point. The second point is her personality. While most people play it off as a gag, we know Haru has a bit of a sadistic side to her, as she comments that she loves it when shadows beg for their life. And the third point would be the symbolism of their personas. Each Phantom Thief's persona is based on a fictional or historical figure known for being an anti-hero, except for Haru's persona, Milady, based on Milady de Winter, a fictional character in Alexandre Dumas. The Three Musketeers is a villain who used manipulation for her own personal gain. It would have made perfect sense for Atlas to make Akechi the Red Herring, while sneaking clues here and there as to the true identity of the traitor. Personally, when I first heard this theory, I kinda wrote it off, but now after researching a bit, I think there could be some validity to it. But what do you guys think? Do you think Haru would have been a good antagonist? Metaverse still exists. We know that because of Persona 5 Strikers, the metaverse still exists and will always exist. That's because the metaverse is simply the physical manifestation of the collective unconscious. So, the only way to destroy the metaverse would be to destroy the collective unconscious, which would be very bad. Nanako's Shadow. I think this one may have started as a gag, since Nanako doesn't have a shadow form officially in the Persona 4 game, but in the manga, it seems that Nanako might have kind of a shadow, or alternate version of herself. I don't know, it's not really explained. This entry might be talking about Persona Record Magi Arena, which is another fanfiction, where Nanako actually does confront her shadow and gains a persona. I don't know if it's intended, but I'm finding so many fanfictions as we reach the end of the iceberg, I may just have to make a video on a few of them. P6 influenced by... I'm not going to say it. I'm going to refrain from using its actual name because I've heard some horror stories of doing so on YouTube, so I'll be calling it Apathy Syndrome instead. Anyways, as I'm sure you all know, Apathy Syndrome spread across the world in 2020 and affected the development of many games due to employees having to work virtually from home instead of meeting in the office. But I don't think that's what this entry is talking about. There's a theory that Apathy Syndrome didn't just affect the release window for Persona 6, but even the story and themes. But how could we possibly know this? Well, if you remember, the 2011 Tohoku earthquake changed Persona 5 drastically early in development. The story was going to be wildly different and feature many different locations around the world. But after the disaster, Hoshino decided to have the game take place in Japan. So it's very possible something on the scale of Apathy Syndrome may have had the same effect on Persona 6's development. Other than that, there isn't really much evidence to this theory. But I don't hate the idea. But what do you guys think the story of Persona 6 will be? My first video on this channel was about just that. So if that interests you, I highly recommend checking it out. Inaba Simulated Reality. I honestly have no idea what this could be referencing to, but I found this really cool video about Inaba and the political themes in Persona 4. I think this entry is this Iceberg's version of every copy of blank is personalized, which is a meme present within many video game icebergs. hidden party members. I think this refers to the fact that in Persona 1, depending on what route you choose in the game, you lose or gain access to certain party members, which is a really cool mechanic, but understandable why Atlus never decided to go in this direction since. Also, in order to find this stuff, I had to go back to forums that were 15 years old, which is insane. Tatsumi Poor Island accident was deliberate. So we all know Yukari's father, Ichiro Takeba, was the one who caused the Tatsumi Poor Island accident in Persona 3 that caused the creation of the Dark Hour and Tartarus. Obviously, at the end of the game, we find out he did this to prevent the fall by splitting Death into 12 pieces. But there is one thing he says in the true version of the recording that is incorrect. He leaves behind a piece of advice to, quote, leave the shadows be, in order to prevent Death from reforming. However, if Cease had chosen not to fight against these shadows, they would have continued to spread apathy syndrome, provoking the fall little by little, which means Cease had no choice but to reform Death and fight it in order to prevent the fall. So why did Ichiro give this false piece of advice? I don't know if this entry is insinuating Ichiro did it on purpose, but we have to remember that apathy syndrome wasn't around during this period, so he wasn't able to take that into consideration. I think this entry might also just be a joke, like some sort of in-universe conspiracy theory. Nameless and Belladonna. Nameless and Belladonna are very mysterious characters within the Persona franchise, as they are among the first inhabitants of the Velvet Room appearing in both Persona 1 and 2. Not much is known about these characters. At first glance, it may seem like they don't follow the tradition of the other attendants of the Velvet Room by being based on Frankenstein characters, but this may not be the case. Belladonna seems to be based after Frankenstein's bride, at least in her design, and Nameless, well, that's a little more confusing. He might be based on DeLacy, the blind man in the novel, whom Frankenstein befriends, or he might be based on Frankenstein's monster himself, who doesn't have a name, and the two are a little similar in design in my opinion. The Universe Arcana grants omnipotence. The Universe Arcana is only featured once in the series, and that's in Persona 3. It's also the only Arcana not from the Rider-Waite Tarot card deck. Instead, it's from the Thoth deck, number 21, and replaces the World Arcana. Even Igor remarks that he could never dream of seeing it. The MC then, with the Universe Arcana, conceal Nyx, who herself is a nigh omnipotent entity. That's all to say, the Universe Arcana is a very mysterious thing that isn't completely unexplained in the games and only appears once, so it's unlikely that it'll ever return. Most people associate it with the power of friendship gimmick in anime. Tokyo Mirage Sessions P5. I've already talked about Tokyo Mirage Sessions and its similarities to the Persona series, so if that's not what this entry is talking about, I'm sorry. Izanami created Nanako. Did you know that upon digging into the deepest depths of the code for the Japanese beta version of Persona 4, specific voice lines can be found between Nanako and Izanami, and they seem to indicate Persona 4 was originally going to be a much darker game? Nah, I'm just kidding. And lastly, the moment we've all been waiting for, circumcision theory. I've been looking forward to this entry ever since I started this Iceberg. So what could this entry possibly be referring to? At first, I thought it was just another gag entry like some of the other entries, but upon further research, I realized that this entry was completely serious. But first, I need to take a step back. When I first had the idea to do this series, the first thing I did was Google and type Persona Iceberg. The first thing I saw were 3 different Persona Icebergs on Reddit, so I took all 3 and mashed them into one and called it a day. But when researching this entry, I found a 4th iceberg that contains more entries I have yet to cover, so I'll definitely be doing that in a later video. But it was under this 4th iceberg that also happens to contain mentions of the circumcision theory where my research began. Someone commented regarding the circumcision theory entry, saying, "To make a long story short, there was a mod from the Silent Hill wiki who is a conspiracy theorist that thought Silent Hill condemned circumcision. He also says the same theory, along with a few other series that can be applied to Persona. Now I was intrigued. The gist of the Silent Hill theory is that Walter Sullivan became a serial killer because he was circumcised. Yes, really. I'm not going to break it down as it's way too much, and this is a Persona iceberg, not the Silent Hill iceberg. There's a Wang video that covers it if you're interested. But the question still remains. What the hell does this have to do with Persona? Well, at one point, the moderator also relates the circumcision theory to other games, and one of the games in that list is the Persona series, especially 3, 4, and 5. Damn, even when it comes to the circumcision theory, 1 and 2 still don't exist. Apparently, he also made edits on the Persona wiki, but unfortunately I could not find it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the circumcision theory. Somehow, someway, Persona is really just about warning against the satanic origins of circumcision. Who would have known? Anyways, that's it for the definitive Persona iceberg. I thought it was a fitting end to the series. As I said before, there are still some entries on the other iceberg I'd like to cover, but I probably won't be doing it in the same way I did the series. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did make it all the way to the end, that means you must have liked what you were watching, so please consider hitting subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that like button as it helps my video in the algorithm. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.